8 spine-chilling trucker horror tales exposed, terrifying secrets from the haunted roads. Jake gripped the wheel tight as he barreled down empty highways, the weight of worry and regret tugging at him. Out there, under the blanket of dark skies, he felt the icy breath of something supernatural lurking. It didn't help that his estranged wife, Clara, had been calling him almost every night, her voice shaking as she spoke about their daughter, Emmy. Night after night, she described how little Emmy whimpered at the shadows just outside her window, her innocent thoughts contorted into nightmares. Panic gripped Jake as he raced against the clock. Dawn would soon break, and he had a delivery to make. The silence was deafening. With only the rumble of the engine to keep him company, Jake felt utterly alone. Out of nowhere, a chilling radio transmission pierced through the static, tales of a shortcut that had claimed lives twisted into whispers. Truckers spoke in hushed tones, warning of figures that roamed the woods. Dark faceless watchers waited, feeding on fear. The hairs on the back of Jake's neck stood up. He shrugged off the ominous legends. He was seasoned, he'd seen it all. But the whispers took on a life of their own when the truck suddenly jolted, the headlights flickering as if signaling his doom. Shadows danced just beyond the reach of the beam, flickers of pale figures that sent a shiver racing down his spine. "Keep it together," he muttered to himself. But then Clara's frantic voice broke through again, riding the waves of static, warning him about strange men lurking near their home. A heart-pounding wave of guilt washed over him. Each mile felt like an ever-tightening noose around his heart. Then his instincts kicked in. Jake decided to take the shortcut, desperate to race toward home. Just as he turned onto that old road, an unsettling chill flooded through him. He felt eyes on him, as if unseen entities were measuring his very soul. Who were they? What did they want? The further he drove, the stronger the oppressive aura grew. He snuck glances at the rearview mirror, catching fleeting glimpses of, unmistakably, ghostly faces, a parade of lost souls trapped in agony. Panic surged within him as he thought of Clara and Emmy. Could he actually protect them from whatever shadows brewed in the night? Then came the cold realization the very neighbors he trusted for years were connected to these lurking horrors. What secrets had they hidden? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Jake's heart raced as the road twisted and turned like a serpent, shadows flicking past him. He could see them now, pale shapes at the edge of the trees, headless whispers creeping closer. He remembered stories of children lost to the night, missing from their homes, their faces now twisted in torment amidst the blackened woods. A former life spiraled before his eyes. Would he ever get back to Emmy? With his breath caught in his throat, he slammed the accelerator and hurtled down that cursed road, uncertainty clawing at his heart. But even as he surged ahead, he knew he was teetering on the edge of something unimaginable, something even worse than the loneliness of the open road, and he couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. Would he uncover the nightmarish truth before it consumed his world, or was the darkness ahead waiting for him with open arms? The engine roared, drowning out the whispers that clawed at the edges of his sanity. The truck bounced over potholes, each thump a reminder of the hell he was racing through. Jake's grip tightened further, knuckles white, as shadows flanked him on both sides, reaching with claw-like fingers as if they yearned to drag him into oblivion. Suddenly, the headlights caught something in the road, a shape, hunched over. Hard in his throat, he braked hard. The truck swerved, tires skidding, and barely managed to stop inches from the figure. It was a girl, thin and pale, her hair matted and muddy, eyes wide and luminous like saucers reflecting terror. She stood frozen, a specter of despair against the midnight backdrop. "Help me," she croaked, voice cracked and barely above a whisper. His instincts screamed at him to drive away, but the desperate look in her eyes held him captive. "What happened?" he stammered, his pulse hammering in his ears. "They take us," she whispered, glancing nervously over her shoulder. The shadows, they come for me. For the others. Her shoulders trembled, as if she feared even the wind that blew past them. Jake's heart raced, the name of his daughter clawing its way to the forefront of his mind. Emmy, he murmured, feeling the weight of regret crushing him. Please, you must go. The girl cried. They'll take you too. Shadows flickered near her feet, murky tendrils creeping from the trees, reaching hungrily. Panic surged within him. He could feel the air growing thick, electric with malice. What had the radio warned him about? The figures, the whispers, they were coming. He slammed the door open and jumped out, adrenaline fueling his movements. Get in! He shouted, desperation bleeding into his voice as he waved her closer. With a quickness that belied her frail appearance, she dashed toward him, her face lit up with fragile hope. But Jake sensed the darkness moving, swirling at the edge of the woods. The whispers intensified, a cacophony that tugged at the corners of his mind. As she climbed into the passenger seat, Jake felt a sinister chill steal over him. The girl's laughter should have been the sound of relief, but it felt wrong, tainted. You shouldn't have come here, she said, her voice hollow, the playful smile fading from her lips. Her eyes stared straight ahead, not at him. They know you're with me now. The truck jolted as the shadows writhed closer. The girl pointed to the rearview mirror, and he followed her gaze. A tall figure stood just beyond the glowing light, a silhouette with no face, no eyes, just darkness where there should have been humanity. Jake's heart thudded like a hammer against his ribs. What are you? He croaked, but the girl's lips curled into a grin that didn't reach her eyes. The ones who take, she whispered, and before he could react, she turned fading into the air. The space she occupied filled with dread. Get back! Jake bellowed, the panic now morphing into a survival frenzy. He fumbled with the keys, hands trembling, urgency fueling his every action. The shadows pressed closer against the windshield, pulsating as if alive. Just as he ignited the engine, a deafening silence spread. The girl was gone, and in her place, the figures surrounded the truck, an army of lost souls, their cries melding with the wind, a haunting chorus that echoed through the night. Go, go! He screamed, slamming the accelerator. The truck lurched forward, tires squealing against the asphalt, but what had he unleashed? The road ahead twisted into darkness, and in the back of his mind, a cold voice whispered, "You won't escape." Fear coiled tightly around him. As he veered around a sharp turn, lights flickered and died. The world plunged into blackness. Jake's heart pounded harder than the tires on the pavement. What is this place? He shouted into the void, but only the echoes of despair answered back. The radio crackled to life once more, and Clara's voice broke through, high-pitched and tinged with terror. They're here, Jake. They've come for Emmy. The weight of dread settled like a dark cloud, thick and suffocating. The race against time had begun once more. What horrors awaited him in the deep of night, and could he truly trust Clara's frantic warnings? As Jake gripped the wheel with shaking hands, one thought pierced through the chaos: was he truly speeding toward salvation, or was the true nightmare just beginning? The engine sputtered, plunging Jake into a silence so heavy it felt like a physical weight pressing against his chest. He cursed under his breath, pounding the dashboard with trembling fists. The headlights flickered weakly, illuminating only a patch of asphalt swallowed by the ink of night. Gone was the girl, gone were the whispers of the damned, but he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The shadows loomed larger now, their long, dark forms pressing in from all sides, wrapping around the truck like a tightening vice. There was nothing but him and the encroaching dark, as if the world beyond the glass had ceased to exist. He scanned the trees lining the road, tall, gnarled silhouettes bent under a weight of unseen dread. Somewhere behind him, a rustling sound made his heart race anew. No, he gritted his teeth, focusing on the road ahead. Just keep driving, but then the radio crackled with an unfamiliar static, a voice breaking through with a harsh whisper. Help us! The hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. Who is this? He shouted, half expecting the weight of despair to answer. The chilling voice continued, resonating through the cramped space of the cab. They see you, they know your name. No. He yelled, slapping the radio off. He had to stay in control. No distractions. He would not let the shadows drag him into the abyss. Suddenly, he caught a flicker of movement in his peripheral vision. It was quick, too quick, like a darting shadow. He swerved, nearly losing control, but there was nothing. Just trees and the oppressive silence. Still, the feeling of being hunted pressed on him. Where are you? He muttered, but the question hung in the air unanswered. The road twisted into a sharper bend, and his grip on the wheel tightened. He couldn't focus. Images flashed in his mind of Mes' smiling face. What would she think if she saw him like this? Determined, Jake accelerated, letting the roar of the engine drown out the whispers that threatened to pull him under. He chanted her name like a lifeline. Emmy, Emmy. As he rounded the bend, something gleamed in the distance, a flickering light, like a beacon. Relief surged through him. Maybe it was a house, a way out of this nightmare. He pushed down on the accelerator, desperation clawing at him like the shadows on the outskirts. Pulling closer, he realized it wasn't a house but a broken-down gas station, its sign flickering fitfully. He skidded to a halt, heart hammering. Could he get help here? It felt wrong yet hopeful. The glass doors rattled on their hinges, swinging slightly as if inviting him in. But the moment he stepped out, dread bloomed in his chest. A thin fog curled around his legs, and shadows danced just at the edge of vision. The air felt wrong, charged with a sweet, suffocating dread that filled his lungs. Hello. He called out, but there was no response, only the echo of his voice swallowed by the darkness. That's when he heard it, a low hum coming from inside the station, like a lullaby twisted into something sinister. Against every instinct, he moved toward the door. The hum pulsed deeper and deeper, reverberating through the very ground beneath him. In the depths of the station, something stirred, something watching. Jake stumbled, his feet scraping against something cold and soft. He looked down. A smear of dark liquid. Blood. A gasp caught in his throat. The flickering light seemed to pulse in rhythm with his heart. Get back to the truck. Another part of him screamed, and yet here he stood, frozen by a sense of dread and curiosity. What had he just stepped into? The hum intensified as he peered inside. Shadows twisted in the corners, swirling like smoke. Then he saw her, another girl, gaunt and ghostly, her eyes hollowed out and glassy. She turned slowly, her lips forming a haunting smile. You shouldn't be here, Jake. His heart dropped. How did she know his name? As the ground beneath him trembled, he prepared to run back, but the door slammed shut behind him. The shadows surged forward, coalescing into a thick mass. You're trapped, they rasped. Fear blanketed him, screaming through his veins. This was nothing but a trap. The true nightmare had begun. What awaited him in the suffocating darkness? What secrets were hidden beneath the whispers that filled the air? Jake's mind raced, and all he could do was yell into the shadows, "What do you want from me?" But the only answer was a chorus of laughter, horrible, chilling, a promise of things that had yet to come. The laughter faded into a deep, echoing silence that consumed Jake. It felt as if the shadows themselves were breathing around him, filling the empty space with a palpable weight. He could hardly comprehend the horror unfolding. The very air thickened with an oppressive dread, wrapping around him like a shroud. What do you want from me? He shouted again, desperation lacing his voice. The girl, her smile unnaturally wide, remained still, her eyes boring into him with an intelligence that chilled him to the bone. Foolish boy, you should have listened. Her voice was a whisper that echoed inside his skull. With each word, the shadows quivered, responding to her command. Jake felt the hair on his arms stand on end, fear spiking through him like a raw electric charge. He stumbled backward, mind racing for an escape route. The door behind him was solid, and it felt as if the very walls of the gas station were alive, closing in around him. The ground trembled again, sending a jolt of panic fluttering in his stomach. He turned toward the flickering light, desperate for something, anything, that might provide an escape. "Help us," came another voice, a softer whisper this time, blending with the whoosh of the wind that snaked through the cracks of the dilapidated building. A shiver coursed down his spine. The shadows moved closer, slithering like dark tendrils, attempting to reach him. "Let me out!" he screamed, battering against the door, but it held firm, a barrier between him and the unknown. He couldn't just stand there. The girl now pointed toward the door at the back of the station, her hollow eyes glimmering with hunger. "Your only way out lies within the dark," she murmured cryptically. Jake felt a chill run through him. What did she mean? But he didn't have time to question. Each second counting against him, he darted past her, heart pounding louder in his ears than the sound of his footsteps echoing against the hard floor. As he reached the back of the station, a cold draft swept through, beckoning him forward. The air thickened, tasting of rust and something far worse. Boxes lay scattered in the dim light, their contents long expired. He fumbled through the clutter, his eyes darting anxiously, searching for any hint of escape while the shadows watched with eager malice. "Join us," a whispered plea teased from the darkness, and Jake's breath caught in his throat. A vision flashed before him, imprisoned souls crying for release, their faces twisted in agony. It was a warning, a plea for help cloaked in desperation. His mind raced. Did they mean to trap him here forever? No. He wouldn't become just another lost soul. "Leave me!" he shouted, forcing himself to move deeper into the maze of the gas station. But the humming was growing louder, resonating like a heartbeat, dark, foreboding. Screams of laughter echoed from beyond, taunting him. With little choice, Jake grabbed a rusted crowbar lying on the floor. Its iron weight felt reassuring in his hands, grounding him in this nightmare. The shadows churned fitfully, revealing glimpses of faces within them, distorted yet familiar memories of people he once knew. "Come play with us!" Tainted laughter rang out, and for a brief moment, he hesitated, overwhelmed by a longing to understand. But the air crackled with danger. He steeled himself and swung the crowbar at the nearest wall. The reverberation shook the entire station, causing the shadows to retreat momentarily. That's when he knew he had to fight back. The door was the only way out, but could he break through the layers of darkness that surrounded him? As he charged back toward the door, the shadows converged, thick and monstrous. The girl, her eyes burning with malice, blocked his path. "You can't escape, Jake. The darkness needs you." But he wasn't listening anymore. Fueled by panic and sheer determination, he surged forward, ready to break free from the nightmare that had ensnared him. With one last desperate lunge, he struck the door. "What are you going to do?" came the ghostly whispers, layering shadows around him as he struck again, and with each blow, the laughter turned to shrieks of horror. But would he shatter not only the door but the walls of despair lurking behind? Jake's heart raced, knowing that the true terror wasn't just in the station but deep within its echoes, a truth he had yet to face. Would he find freedom, or would he succumb to the darkness, his story becoming just another whisper in the night? The door shuddered with each frantic blow, the sound reverberating through the gas station like thunder. Jake barely noticed the shadows retreating, their twisted forms jittering in his peripheral vision. All he cared about was the familiar outline of the door. Freedom just beyond the wood, and he was almost there. With a final, desperate grunt, he swung the crowbar with all his might. Splinters exploded around him as the ancient door cracked. Light spilled into the room, casting a stark contrast against the encroaching dark. Just as he lunged forward, something cold and sharp shot past him, grazing his arm. Jake's body jolted back, blood oozing from the cut. He looked up, his heart racing. The girl stood closer now, her once playful smile morphing into a hideous grimace. "You shouldn't have come here," she hissed, her voice a hiss of static and venom. In that moment, he realized the shadows were not only spectators, they were alive, writhing with a hunger that made his stomach churn. The laughter returned, now a cacophony of mocking jeers as Jake stumbled further back, his foot snaring on a rusted pipe. He twisted to catch himself, the crowbar slipping from his grip and clattering to the floor. "Join us, embrace your fate," the voices echoed, softer yet more sinister. Faces melted into the walls, their eye sockets black and unyielding, reaching out for him from the inky void. Panic drove Jake's heart hard against his ribs. It felt like it might explode. The door wasn't just a way out, it was a portal, holding the weight of 1,000 souls begging to be set free, and yet it threatened to consume him whole. In that moment of desperation, a flicker of resolve tapped at the back of his mind. He had to confront this. No more running. With a shaking breath, Jake turned towards the swirling shadows that had once seemed terrifying but now appeared almost inviting, their whispers beckoning him into a chilling embrace. "I want to join you," he shouted, his voice echoing against the walls. "I am not afraid." This proclamation only provoked their wrath. A shriek pierced the air, and the dark mass surged at him, grief and anger coalescing into a desperate frenzy. He stumbled back, slipping on the slick floor. Somehow, he landed hard, but instead of panic, something deep within him ignited. Jake scrambled to his feet, rushing the door again. The shadows lost their grip momentarily as he slammed into the remnants of the warped wood. He felt it give way slightly, breath hitching with hope. "Help us!" The voices shrieked again, now more desperate, like tortured souls pleading for release. "Shut up!" he roared, striking the door once more. The wood splintered further, a sliver of light contrasting against the pitch. With one last, mighty heave, Jake pushed against the door, forcing it open just enough to slip through. Freedom lay just outside, tantalizingly close. But as he forced himself through the narrow gap, Jake felt something cold wrap around his ankle, dragging him back, and the shrieks turned to furious howls. "I refuse." Struggling, he kicked back at the tendril gripping him, satisfaction blooming as it recoiled for a moment, but the moment was short-lived. The shadows began to rise around him, thick and tangible, pulling him toward the darkness. He knew he had to fight, had to break loose, had to face whatever created this horror. Then he saw her again, the girl among the shadows, her huge, pleading eyes locking with his. "You can't escape," she screamed, and behind her, twisted forms began to coalesce, each one horrifyingly familiar. As his heart pounded against his chest, a sense of dread coursed through him. Jake realized they weren't just shadows, they were the lost souls of those who had once tried to escape, each a reflection of his potential fate. What would he do now? Would he fight for survival or join them in that hellish void? In that fraught moment, Jake realized the truth shattered his bravado. This shadowy nightmare was not just about finding an exit. It was about overcoming his own darkest fears before they consumed him completely, and deep down, he knew that once he entered the darkness, the real fight would begin. Jake took a breath, readying himself for what lay ahead. The shadows shifted around him, pulsating with an awful energy. Could he face the darkness inside him, or would it welcome him with open arms? A jolt ran through Jake's body as the cold tendril twisted tighter around his ankle, tugging him back into the void. Heart racing, he kicked violently, feeling the icy grip loosen just enough for him to crawl forward. Desperation clawed at him, he would not give in. He lunged again, shoving his shoulder against the doorframe, pushing with all his strength. The names of those lost echoed in his mind, each screech a reminder of what awaited him if he failed. Just as he felt the shadows begin to give way, the girl screamed again, her voice cracking like glass. "Help us!" she cried, but her voice blended into the chaos surrounding him. The shadows vibrated with anger, thrashing around him like a storm, eager to pull him back into their suffocating embrace. "Stop it!" Jake roared, fury igniting within him. He couldn't let them win. With one final heave, he rolled out of the doorway, tumbling onto the ground outside. The night air hit him like a slap. It was colder here, but also clearer, fresher than what he had just escaped, but he was safe yet. Glancing up, Jake saw the door beginning to close, the shadows retreating. In a panic, he scrambled to his feet and raced toward it, shoving against the oppressive darkness as it fought to close. The girl's face was now a mask of despair, her eyes wide as the door creaked ominously. the hungry shadows clawing back to reclaim their prize, that he felt the tug at his ankle again, a powerful pull dragging him back into the abyss. In that instant, Jake felt a terrible urgency grip him. He had to figure out how to save these souls, to free both himself and those trapped behind the door. Release them! He shouted at the encroaching shadows, clutching his head as their howls pierced his ears. I won't let you take anyone else. His heart raced as he realized that maybe he could turn their energy against them. Acting on instinct, Jake closed his eyes, focusing on the warmth within him, the spark of life, the drive to survive. With every ounce of will, he shouted again, "You are nothing to me. You are weak." A hiss, sharp and furious, responded to his defiance. The shadows recoiled, but not without leaving a burning sensation on his leg, as though branding him. He cracked open one eye and saw the dark tendrils withdraw for a heartbeat, surprised at his audacity. Then came the screech, louder than any before, piercing his ears. The shadows surged forward like a tidal wave, intent on consuming him whole. In a moment of clarity, Jake recognized their true form, how they were feeding off the pain and fear of the lost souls around him. It was a haunting reflection of his own life. He had to confront his past to break their hold. Enough! He howled, fists clenched, unleashing the memories he had long buried, moments of shame, regret, loss. Each memory ignited a flame within him, feeding his strength, amplifying his voice as he bellowed, "I am not your pawn. These souls are free." The shadows writhed, screeching in agony as they were pulled into the light of his determination. For the first time, Jake felt their malevolence falter, the screams turning into desperate wails. As if his very essence countered their darkness, the world around him began to shift, the shadows flickering like dying embers. Then, surprisingly, he heard a new voice, soft and sweet, threading through the chaos. "Jake, we're counting on you," it whispered. He realized it was the girl. Her tone changed from malice to something vulnerable. The shadows were losing power, and she reached out, her cold fingers a bridge to the lost souls. With a rush of adrenaline, Jake focused all his energy, allowing the warmth and light of his resolve to burst from within him. He felt them pulling away, and as he opened his eyes fully, the world transformed. The door was wider, lighter, and the shadows contorted back, shrieking as if in pain, but he still felt a lingering dread. Even with the shadows weakening, something deeper stirred behind him, something darker and more insidious, waiting for the chance to latch onto weakness. Could he really save anyone, or was this just the beginning of a much darker confrontation? The haunting whispers grew louder, and Jake knew he had to find the source of that true darkness before it swallowed him whole. What lay ahead was uncertain, but he had no choice now. He had to confront the darkness within and without something that could consume him just as easily. Would the shadows finally vanish, or would they become stronger, pulling him down into despair? Jake staggered back as the shadows writhed and coiled behind him, an unseen predator lurking just out of reach. The night sky painted a chilling canvas, with the stars shrouded by clouds, as if to shield themselves from the horror unfolding below. He felt cold sweat trickle down his spine, blending with the stinging sensation still radiating from his leg. "Stay with me," he shouted, turning his gaze back to the girl, her spectral figure glowing faintly in the dark. "Help me open the door." A defiant spark in her eyes ignited a flicker of hope, but it was overshadowed by the ominous shadows gathering in silence. Plodding, with a shaking breath, Jake stepped deeper into the encroaching darkness, heart hammering in his chest. Each inch felt like a crack in his very being. He could sense the shadows' hunger, coiling tighter, whispering his worst fears in an unholy chorus. They taunted him, asking, "What part of your past will set you free?" "Shut up!" he yelled, gritting his teeth. "I won't be broken again." The girl stepped closer, her cold hand brushing against his arm. "We need to break the curse," she urged, urgency flooding her tone. "But you can't face them alone." From somewhere beyond the shadows, he heard the voices of those who had been lost, a symphony of sorrow echoing through the darkness. Each sob cracked like ice beneath his feet. Suddenly, he remembered her name, replaying it in his mind: Mia. It felt like a talisman against the darkness. Why are you here, Mia? He asked, fear gnawing at the edges of his courage. What do you want? To be free like them, she whispered, eyes glistening with unspent tears. But we need to confront what binds us. Only then, can we break their hold. A thunderous roar enveloped them, a warning from the shadows, and a surge of dread coursed through Jake. They were aware of his defiance, and they did not like it. Without thinking, he clenched his jaw and held Mia's gaze. Together, they would have to face whatever haunted them. Close your eyes, Jake said, taking a step toward the chaotic mass, channeling every ounce of strength. Focus on the love we've lost. As they stood there, he felt their connection growing, a bond forged from shared loss, suffering, and the ambition to find peace. Mira's presence burned stronger in his mind. The shadows pulsated with anger, shifting and swirling as if preparing for a final assault. Let go of your fears. Jake shouted, his voice rising above the cacophony. I want you to remember and let it go. A stunning moment of clarity rushed over him as memories surged forth. Faces of friends, family, even some he had never met, filled his mind. He saw laughter, kindness, warmth, all the beautiful moments that had been overshadowed by regret. With a fierce cry, Jake bellowed, "You are powerless." The shadows shrieked in protest, but Jake felt them waver, their grip slackening. The air pulsed with a violent energy as they recoiled, and he sensed that a rift was being torn. Now, Mia. Reach for them. He yelled, extending his arm as her fingers brushed against his. She nodded fiercely, and together they pushed against the darkness, willing the light of liberation to shine through, but just as the shadows began to crumble like dust in the wind, a chilling laughter erupted behind him. A figure was forming amidst the swirling chaos, tall and cloaked, its eyes glowing with malevolence. Jake's heart sank. This was the true source of their torment. Did you really think you could break a bond forged in despair? It hissed, wrapping cold fingers of dread around Jake's throat. You have only awakened me. He gasped, eyes wide. Who are you? I am the darkness, the figure whispered, voice dripping with venom, born from every unfulfilled wish and every nightmare you've dared to ignore, and your reckoning is at hand. With a surge of cold terror, Jake realized they hadn't just stirred the shadows. They had awakened something far more malevolent. Run! Mia cried out, her voice cutting through the fear. Jake turned but found himself rooted in place as the darkness grew, surging forward like a tidal wave, ready to consume everything in its path. What would happen next? Was there any escape from the depths of this nightmare? The shadows were closing in, and dread filled the air. As Jake braced himself for the impending darkness, he knew he had only one chance to confront the horror ahead. And he could only hope that his fight had not just awakened doom but a chance for redemption. The encroaching darkness crackled with hostility, and Jake found himself straining against an unseen weight. Panic clutched at his chest, suffocating him. He had never felt so small, so helpless. Stay close. He yelled to Mia, twisting his head to catch a glimpse of her. But she was fading, her translucent form barely visible against the deepening shadows. His heart raced. Don't leave me. I'm here. She shouted back, her desperate voice echoing in the chaos. The shadows stirred, angered at the defiance emanating from them both. They hissed, a slithering sound that slithered and coiled through the air, saturating it with dread. As he struggled to move forward, Jake's leg buckled beneath him, pain jolting through, rendering him immobile. With sheer will, he forced himself upright, the chill of hopelessness creeping in to replace the warmth of fear. If he could just reach Mia, they could break free, but the figure behind him loomed closer, its cold, calculated laughter reverberating through the freezing air. You are weaving a tragedy, boy, it rasped, mocking his efforts. Do you not see? You cannot escape your demons. They will always find you. Jake swallowed hard, summoning every ounce of strength he had left. He squeezed his eyes shut, digging deep within for any remnant of belief. Memories flashed like lightning, happiness one moment, despair the next. But those past joys fluttered like moths around a flame, drawing the dark closer and closer. "Mia!" he cried, opening his eyes. "We have to remember together." At that moment, the shadows surged forward, but a sudden surge of warmth shot through him as Mia clasped his hand. Her touch anchored him, stirring something deep inside him. They were vulnerable, yet together they formed an ember of light in an engulfing darkness. "Focus on love," Mia urged, her voice barely audible above the chaos. "Remember the laughter, the warmth." Jake nodded, willing himself to concentrate. The faces came flooding back, the friends, the family he lost, their laughter twinkling like stars in his memory, guiding him deeper into the light. It washed over him peacefully, igniting the courage they'd both lost, but the greater shadow, the creature of darkness, was suddenly at their backs, its cold breath chilling him to the bone. "Love? You cling to the illusion of affection, how quaint," it sneered, a bony finger stretching toward Mia. "I will devour your hopes, one by one." "Don't listen," Jake shouted, overriding the creature's words. He took a step forward, pulling Mia with him. "Keep your eyes on the light." Yet, the shadows pulsed wildly at their refusal to yield. They began to twist, forming teeth and claws, their grotesque shapes writhing with malevolence. Each snarl was a reminder of the dread that lurked just behind their resolve, the dark promise of despair that awaited if they faltered. "Jake, they're rising!" Mia cried, her voice strained as she squeezed his hand tighter. "We can't give in. Fight!" With every ounce of strength surging from somewhere deep within, Jake wrapped his other hand around Mia's. He shut out the darkness and focused solely on their bond, the shared pain forged into something strong. "Together!" he bellowed, feeling their connection pulsate. "We're breaking this." As the shadows lunged, their tendrils wrapping around them like a shroud, Jake roared, "We are not alone. Our love is stronger than your hate." The air crackled as their defiance met the darkness head-on, an explosion of light erupting between them and the consuming shadows. But just as the surge grew, a chilling pause blanketed the scene, a moment of calm before the storm. "What is happening?" the creature hissed, a tremor of uncertainty breaking its malevolent facade. "Keep fighting," Mia exclaimed, her eyes wide with determination. Suddenly, the shadows lurched, and with a horrific roar, they recoiled as if wounded. The figures fell back, but Jake could see they were regrouping, larger and more ravenous than before, but then, through the restless gloom, something shone. A spectral light flickered just beyond the encircling shadows, a door. Ajar, glinting with hope. "The way out!" Jake shouted, adrenaline coursing through him. Mia followed his gaze, terror dancing in her eyes. "But we have to hurry. They will come for us." In that pivotal moment, dread tightened around them as the dark figures surged once more, angry and vengeful. As time shattered in that grasping darkness, Jake had to make a choice: face the shadows or leap toward the glimmering light. Could they escape together? Or would they be consumed by their fears? They had one chance, and he could sense the darkness swelling behind them. Impatient and hungry, with hearts pounding, Jake and Mia raced toward the door, but the shadows lunged, shrieking with fury. Would they make it? Would the light be their salvation or their doom? A final roar filled the air, and they braced for the unknown, caught between hope and despair. The shadows closed in like a noose, tightening around Jake and Mia as they sprinted toward the haunted glimmer of hope. With each frantic step, the air thickened, heavy with dread, their hearts beating in a chaotic rhythm that echoed against the encroaching darkness. "Faster!" Jake shouted, feeling the icy tendrils reach for them. A guttural roar erupted from them, shaking the ground. He could sense the malevolence lurking behind, a predator stalking its prey. Mia glanced over her shoulder, her face pale as terror warped her features. "They're right behind us," she gasped, her voice trembling. "We need to hurry." The doorway gleamed like a mirage, almost mocking in its promise of safety. The shadows surged forward, their monstrous forms twisting and clawing through the empty space, hungry for flesh and fear. Jake couldn't let them catch Mia. He forced his legs to move faster, the pressure of fear propelling him forward. "Hold on," he urged. "We're almost there." But as they neared the door, it flickered, wavering like a candle flame in a storm. A sense of foreboding enveloped Jake. "Mia, do you see that?" he questioned, his heart dropping. "It's fading. Stay with me," she shouted, her voice a lifeline. "Keep going." Jake's chest heaved as he pushed through the suffocating air. With one last burst of adrenaline, he lunged forward, reaching for the door's edge. Just as his fingers brushed against the cool surface, a screech pierced the air, a sound that twisted through their bones like ice. The ground trembled as the shadows roared in fury. Tendrils snaked around their ankles, yanking them back with horrifying strength. Jake felt the darkness wrap around him, squeezing tight like a vice. "Jake!" Mia cried, her eyes wide with horror. "We can't let go." Ignoring the panic clawing at him, he grasped her hand tighter. "We won T," he shouted, summoning every ounce of willpower, every memory of light. They both turned their eyes toward the door again, summoning love and laughter in a desperate act of defiance, but the shadows loomed closer, their wicked grins stretching wider with each passing moment. "You think you can escape?" the creature hissed, voice dripping with venom. "This is where hope dies." With one final, monstrous pull, the shadows leaped, ready to swallow them whole. But as darkness surged, the door blazed brighter, a shield against the encroaching fear. Jake felt the warmth of it wrap around them, urging them to push through. "Scream it!" Mia shouted, courage threading through her voice. "Scream our love!" Jake's heart pulsed like a drum. "We are stronger. Our memories will burn you." Together, they screamed, the sound piercing through the thick fog of despair. With all their might, they pushed against the shadows, racing toward the portal as chaos erupted around them, the shadows screaming in confusion. As they sped toward the door, the darkness howled, the cacophony twisting into a nightmarish orchestra of regret and rage. Jake felt the pull of despair, tugging at his consciousness, trying to gnaw away at his resolve. He couldn't afford to let go. Not now. Not ever. And then, they plunged through the door, the light washing over them like cleansing rain. But the moment they crossed the threshold, Jake felt a chilling breath against his neck, a whisper of malevolence promising that this was far from over. The world spun around them, warping and shifting as if the very fabric of reality was tearing apart. Suddenly, they found themselves standing in a vast, desolate landscape, the skies darkened with swarms of swirling shadows. The air was thick with anguish, and as they surveyed their surroundings, a bone-chilling realization set in. What happened? Mia stammered, gripping Jake's arm tightly. Before he could answer, from the storm of shadows emerged the creature, a colossal figure made of darkness, more imposing than before, its eyes glistening with malice. "You thought you could escape me?" it hissed, a sinister smile spreading across its chiseled face. Jake trembled, rooted to the spot. This isn't over. As the creature surged forward, he felt the grip of despair tightening around them again. Would the light they thought they found be their undoing? They were in deeper than ever, trapped between realms as darkness swirled around them. A new kind of fear clawed at Jake's heart, sharper than before. What awaited them in this new realm? Would they find a way to free themselves, or were they doomed to wander forever in the shadows? The ground shook beneath them, and uncertainty loomed overhead, heavy and dark. They needed a plan. They needed to fight. Was it even possible to extinguish the darkness, or would it simply consume them whole? Jake's breath hitched as he gaped at the towering darkness. The creature loomed like a fallen star, its presence crackling with raw malevolence. Jake squeezed Mia's hand, rallying against the panic that threatened to swallow them both. Deep down, he knew this fight wasn't just a battle against the shadows, it was a fight for the light within them. Together. We fight together. He shouted, pumping energy into his voice as he stepped forward, forcing himself to stand tall against despair. The creature laughed, a chilling sound rippling through the air, dark and beautiful like a haunting melody. You really think your love can save you? But Jake felt a shaft of hope ignite within him. It already has. He swung around, facing Mia, whose trembling form steadied as her fierce gaze met his determination. She nodded, and together they raised their joined hands to the heavens, channeling every ounce of warmth and memories they held. Laughter, hugs, sunlit days flooded their minds, their love igniting a beacon in the gloom. As if sensing the shift, the shadows around them flickered, distorted by a force they couldn't see but could feel. The darkness recoiled in frustration, attempting to drown their light in waves of pressure and despair. Focus! Jake shouted, feeling the bond between them fortify. Let the love ignite. Let our memories break through. With each heartbeat, Jake felt Mia's unwavering spirit pulse through him. I won't lose you. He cried, remembering the warmth of their daughter. I will fight for her. For us. Suddenly, a blinding light exploded from their clasped hands, blaring against the dark landscape. The shadows writhed and twisted, the cries of the tortured souls rising to a crescendo as Jake pushed through. They were more than just thoughts, they were a force meant to chase the darkness away. No. The creature howled, thrusting out long, claw-like hands in a desperate bid to snuff out their flame, but Jake and Mia surged forward, light burning brighter, illuminating the shadows like cockroaches under a bright sun. No more. You have no hold on us. They shouted in unison, the creature screeched, a primal sound echoing through the void as it staggered back. The shadows thrashed, trying to quench their light, but for once, it was the darkness that faltered. With a final push of their combined strength, Jake extended his hand toward the looming figure. We are not afraid of you. He bellowed, feeling every ounce of pain and sorrow rise and transform into unyielding courage. The light radiated from him, engulfing the creature in a brilliant embrace, forcing it to writhe like a moth drawn to fire. The shadows screamed, disappearing one by one until only the creature remained, eyes filled with rage. You will pay for this. It bellowed, poised to unleash a final wave of darkness, but Jake felt the warmth of the light amplifying their strength. We've already paid, he called back, his voice echoing like thunder. Let us go. With one final push, the radiant energy erupted from their hands, enveloping the creature, and with it, a shattering explosion released a wave of understanding that fractured both their grief and the darkness surrounding them. The echoes of lost souls whispered words of gratefulness, rising like butterflies set free from their constraints. Then, as quickly as it had begun, it all fell silent. Jake opened his eyes, his heart hammering, and looked around. They stood at the edge of a sunlit field, lush and blooming with colors he'd almost forgotten. The air felt fresh, filled with laughter, a symphony of joy that resonated through his bones. Mia turned to him, her breath steady, her eyes shining with tears of relief. We did it. We really did it. But before he could respond, their names echoed out, soft yet urgent. Mommy. Daddy. Emmy. Panic quickened Jake's heart as he turned to see his little girl rushing toward them across the vibrant meadow, laughter spilling from her lips. A wave of relief washed over him as he dropped to his knees, arms wide open. Sweetheart. Mia exclaimed, falling to meet her at the same time. With a squeal of delight, Emmy jumped into their embrace, wrapping her tiny arms around them as they laughed and cried together. There was a darkness, Jake whispered to Mia, gripping her tightly. But we'll never let it haunt us again. Not when we have each other. As they stood encircled in love, Jake felt the warmth seep into his very soul. They had conquered the nightmarish void and emerged into the light together. With Emmy nestled between them, Jake gazed out across the field, a glowing promise of new beginnings, of hope. Together, they would move forward, leaving the shadows behind. And in this new chapter of life, every lost soul whispered a silent vow of redemption within their hearts. The journey had changed him forever, a tale etched within his core. Jake would never forget the weight of the shadows, nor the strength of their love that illuminated the darkest paths. Moments later, the sun began to set in beautiful hues of orange and pink, casting a warm glow over their laughter as love prevailed. Now, it was time for them to live, to embrace the rest of their lives. As the screen fades to black, remember this is just the end of one journey and not the last. If you enjoyed this thrilling tale, you need to subscribe now, so you don't miss what's next. Smash that like button to feed the algorithm and show your support. Flood the comments with your thoughts and reactions about Jake, Mia, and MES adventure. This is the moment to connect and share your theories. Finally, wait even one more second to share this with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. True fans know the importance of rallying behind the stories they love.